Imagine waking inside a Roman city without knowing that, before the next sunrise, its streets would disappear beneath stone, ash, and darkness. Bakers heated their ovens. Merchants opened wooden shutters. Families prepared breakfast. Above them stood Mount Vesuvius, green, quiet, and so familiar that few people treated it as a threat. Then the ground began to tremble. Animals became restless. A strange cloud rose above the mountain. Pompeii was about to become one of history's most perfectly preserved disasters, but the real story is not simply that a volcano erupted. It is the story of thousands of people making impossible decisions while their world collapsed around them. Pompeii was not a silent monument. It was a crowded, noisy city connected to the trade routes of the Roman Empire. Its streets contained bakeries, workshops, taverns, bathhouses, temples, gardens, and large decorated homes. Painted advertisements covered walls. Carts cut deep grooves into stone roads. Wealthy citizens displayed mosaics and fountains, while laborers, traders, enslaved people, and travelers filled the markets. The city had already been damaged by a major earthquake years earlier, and repairs were still visible. Yet life continued. Vesuvius had been quiet for generations. Its slopes were fertile, covered with farms and vineyards. To the people below, the mountain seemed less like a weapon and more like part of the landscape. The region around Pompeii was used to earthquakes. Small shocks could be dismissed as ordinary. That familiarity may have made the final warnings easier to ignore. Wells reportedly changed. Tremors became more frequent. The earth beneath the Bay of Naples was moving, but no one possessed modern volcanic science, monitoring stations, or evacuation maps. The Romans understood earthquakes, smoke, and fire, yet they did not fully understand the pressure building beneath Vesuvius. Even the mountain's true nature was not obvious. Its summit was covered with vegetation. When the first violent explosion came, it did not look like a slow river of lava. It looked like the sky itself had been torn open. Sometime in the year 79, probably during the autumn, Vesuvius exploded with extraordinary force. A towering column of ash, gas, and shattered rock rose kilometers into the atmosphere. Pliny the Younger, watching from across the bay, later compared its shape to a pine tree, a narrow trunk climbing upward before spreading into branches. Sunlight weakened. Pumice began falling across Pompeii. At first, some residents may have watched in shock. Then the stones grew heavier. Roof tiles rattled. Streets turned pale beneath accumulating debris. People covered their heads with pillows or cloth. Some fled toward the gates. Others returned for money, jewelry, relatives, or possessions they could not bear to abandon. As the eruption continued, day became night. Ash filled the air and blocked the sun. Breathing became difficult. Lamps were needed even though it should have been daylight. Pumice piled higher in courtyards and streets. Doors became difficult to open. Roofs began collapsing under the growing weight. Every decision became more dangerous. Leaving meant walking through darkness while stones fell from above. Staying meant trusting walls and beams that were beginning to fail. Families tied themselves together so they would not be separated. People searched for open roads, but familiar streets were disappearing beneath their feet. Pompeii was not destroyed in a single instant. It was trapped hour by hour. Many people escaped during the early phase, and that fact matters. Pompeii was not a city where everyone waited helplessly for death. Thousands probably left before the worst surges arrived. But others remained. Some were elderly, injured, poor, responsible for children, or unwilling to leave homes containing everything they owned. Some may have believed the eruption would weaken. Others sheltered inside strong buildings, hoping the stone walls would protect them. A group gathered near the city gates. Another sought safety inside houses and public buildings. Their choices were understandable, but the danger was changing. The falling pumice was only the first stage. A far deadlier force was forming above the volcano. Across the Bay of Naples, the Roman commander and naturalist Pliny the Elder saw the eruption. He first prepared to investigate it, but messages soon turned the journey into a rescue mission. Ships moved toward the danger while frightened residents tried to escape by sea. Ash fell on the decks. Pumice threatened the coastline. Winds and rough conditions made movement difficult. Pliny reached the area near Stabii, where he tried to remain calm and reassure others. But the air became poisonous and heavy. He died before the disaster ended. His nephew's later letters preserved one of the most important eyewitness accounts of any ancient eruption. Nearby Herculaneum faced a different sequence of destruction. Wind initially carried much of the falling material toward Pompeii, leaving Herculaneum with less pumice. That may have created false hope. Later, the eruption column began to collapse. Superheated clouds of gas, ash, and rock raced down the slopes. These pyroclastic surges moved with devastating speed. Herculaneum was overwhelmed and buried beneath deep volcanic deposits. At the ancient shoreline, people had gathered in boat chambers, perhaps waiting for rescue. The surges reached them before help arrived. The same volcano destroyed neighboring towns in different ways, depending on wind, distance, landscape, and timing. By the following morning, the eruption entered its most lethal phase. The towering cloud could no longer support its own weight. Sections collapsed, sending pyroclastic surges outward. The first surges did not fully cross Pompeii, but later ones did. A fast-moving wave of scorching gas and ash swept through streets, rooms, gardens, and open spaces. People who had survived the falling pumice had almost no time to react. The final positions of many victims show sudden movement, a person turning, a family huddling together, someone covering a face, another reaching for a doorway. The city that had struggled through hours of darkness was finally silenced. When the eruption ended, Pompeii lay beneath meters of ash and pumice. Roofs had collapsed. Streets had vanished. The coastline and surrounding land were altered. Survivors returned to search for valuables, and Roman authorities organized relief, but rebuilding the city was impossible. Over time, memory faded. New communities grew nearby. Fields covered parts of the buried landscape. Pompeii became a place mentioned in old texts but largely lost from sight. The disaster that destroyed the city also sealed it away from weather, rebuilding, and centuries of change. Walls, paintings, food remains, tools, graffiti, and ordinary household objects survived because the city had been buried so completely. Centuries later, tunnels, construction, and organized excavations gradually revealed the buried city. Archaeologists found rooms still arranged around courtyards, political messages painted on walls, bread ovens, shops, temples, theaters, and human remains. In the 19th century, excavators noticed empty spaces inside hardened ash. By carefully pouring plaster into some of these cavities, they created casts preserving the outlines of victims whose bodies had decomposed long before. The casts are powerful, but Pompeii's greatest value is broader. It preserves the structure of daily life, where people cooked, slept, worked, worshipped, argued, advertised, and entertained themselves. Pompeii is often described as a city frozen in time, but it was not truly frozen. It was interrupted. Its walls were under repair. Its businesses were changing. Its residents were making plans. That is why the ruins feel so immediate. The people of Pompeii were not symbols waiting inside a history book. They were individuals responding to uncertain information, protecting families, saving possessions, and deciding whether to stay or run. The volcano preserved their world by destroying it. Nearly 2,000 years later, every doorway and wheel mark carries the same warning: ordinary life can appear permanent until nature proves how quickly permanence can disappear.